The ranch was quiet that night. Too quiet. Jack Bartlett stood in the shadows of the barn, his weathered hands gripping a piece of paper that would change everything. For months, he had watched Nathan Pryce become part of their family. He had seen his granddaughter Amy smile again after so much pain. He had welcomed this man into their lives, into their home, into their hearts. But now, as the moonlight filtered through the barn doors, Jack knew the truth. And the truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. Nathan had been lying to them all. The question wasn't whether Jack should tell Amy. The question was whether their family could survive what came next. Jack had always trusted his instincts. After 70+ years of living, raising a family, and running Heartland Ranch, he had learned to read people like he read horses. And lately, something about Nathan Pryce had been setting off alarm bells in his gut. It started small, little things that most people would brush off. Nathan would get phone calls and immediately step outside, even in the freezing cold. His smile would disappear the moment he thought no one was watching. He had become jumpy, always looking over his shoulder like he was expecting someone or something to catch up with him. Amy hadn't noticed, or maybe she had, but she was choosing not to see it. Jack understood why. His granddaughter had been through hell and back. Losing Ty had nearly destroyed her. Watching her slowly open her heart to Nathan had been bittersweet. Jack wanted her to be happy. God knows she deserved it. But he also knew that happiness built on lies never lasted. And he was starting to suspect that Nathan's entire relationship with Amy might be built on something that wasn't quite true. The first real warning sign came on a Tuesday evening. Jack had been walking back from checking on the horses in the far pasture when he heard voices coming from Nathan's truck. The veterinarian was parked near the main barn, and he was on the phone. Jack wasn't the type to eavesdrop, but something about Nathan's tone made him stop. The man sounded desperate, almost angry. Jack moved closer, staying in the shadows where Nathan wouldn't see him. He could only catch pieces of the conversation, but what he heard made his blood run cold. "I told you. I can't do that anymore," Nathan was saying, his voice tight with stress. "That part of my life is over. I have a new life now, a new family." There was a long pause as whoever was on the other end spoke. Then Nathan's voice dropped even lower. "No, she doesn't know. And she can't know. It would destroy everything. You promised me this was finished. You promised me I could leave it all behind." Another pause. "I don't care what you need. Find someone else. I'm done." Nathan ended the call and sat there in his truck for a long moment, his head in his hands. Jack watched as the man he had started to trust, the man his granddaughter loved, seemed to crumble under the weight of whatever secret he was carrying. Jack stood there in the darkness, his mind racing. What was Nathan hiding? What part of his life was he so desperate to keep buried? And most importantly, what did it mean for Amy? Jack knew he couldn't just let this go. His protective instincts, the same ones that had kept his family safe for decades, were screaming at him that something was very wrong. He made a decision right there in the cold night air. He would find out what Nathan was hiding. And he would do it before that secret had a chance to hurt his granddaughter any more than she had already been hurt. Whatever it took, Jack would uncover the truth. Jack didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle around him, his mind working through possibilities like a puzzle with missing pieces. By the time the sun came up, he had made his decision. He wasn't going to confront Nathan. Not yet. That would only give the man a chance to cover his tracks, to spin whatever story he needed to keep his secrets buried. No, Jack was going to do something he never thought he would do. He was going to investigate someone his family trusted. The next morning, Jack started paying attention in ways he hadn't before. He watched Nathan when the veterinarian thought no one was looking. He noticed how Nathan's hands would shake slightly when his phone rang. He saw the way Nathan would check the driveway constantly, as if waiting for someone unwelcome to arrive. Amy was too wrapped up in her own world to see these things. She was busy with the horses, with Lindy, with trying to build a life that felt normal again. But Jack saw everything, and what he saw scared him more each day. 3 days after overhearing that phone call, Jack's opportunity came. Nathan had been called out to the Dude Ranch for an emergency with one of their horses. Amy had gone with him because the horse was one she had worked with before. They would be gone for at least 2 hours, maybe more. Jack knew this was his chance. He walked across the yard to Nathan's truck, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. He wasn't proud of what he was about to do, but he kept thinking about that phone call, about Nathan saying she can't know and it would destroy everything. The truck was unlocked. Nathan always left it open on the ranch property, saying he trusted everyone at Heartland. Jack almost laughed at the irony as he opened the passenger door and climbed inside. The cab smelled like coffee and the antiseptic Nathan used for his veterinary work. Jack started looking through the glove compartment, feeling like a criminal even though he was trying to protect his family. Registration papers, an old map, some receipts from the feed store. Nothing unusual. He was about to give up when his hand brushed against something wedged behind the sun visor. An envelope, thick and official looking, with a return address from a law firm in Vancouver. Jack's hands trembled as he pulled it down. The envelope was addressed to Nathan, but it had been opened. Jack knew he was crossing a line. Reading someone else's mail was wrong. His wife, Lindy, would have scolded him for even thinking about it. But that phone call kept echoing in his head. She can't know. It would destroy everything. Jack pulled out the papers inside and started reading. What he found made his stomach drop. The letter was from a lawyer representing someone named Monica Pryce, Nathan's late wife. Except according to these papers, she wasn't late at all. She wasn't dead. The letter talked about settlement negotiations, about finalizing arrangements, about keeping certain matters private. Jack read it twice, then 3 times, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Nathan had told everyone that his wife had died. He had bonded with Amy over their shared grief, over both of them losing their spouses. But this letter was dated just 4 months ago, and it was very clearly about a woman who was very much alive. Jack's hands were shaking now. He took out his phone and snapped pictures of every page, making sure to capture all the details. Then he carefully put the papers back exactly as he had found them and climbed out of the truck. He walked back to the house on legs that felt unsteady, his mind reeling from what he had discovered. Nathan hadn't lost his wife to death. He had lost her some other way, and he had been lying about it from the very beginning. But why? What was so terrible about the truth that Nathan would rather tell Amy his wife was dead than explain what really happened? Jack spent the next 2 days wrestling with demons he didn't know he had. He found himself doing something he rarely did anymore. He drove into town, parked his truck at the old cemetery where Lindy was buried, and sat there talking to his late wife like she could still hear him. Maybe she could. Jack had never been sure about those kinds of things, but right now he needed her wisdom more than he needed his next breath. He told her everything. About the letter, about Nathan's lies, about the impossible choice sitting on his shoulders like a mountain he couldn't move. "What do I do, Lindy?" he whispered to the headstone that bore her name. "If I tell Amy, I'll break her heart all over again. But if I stay quiet, I'm letting her build a life with a man who lies about something this big." The wind rustled through the trees, but no answers came. Jack sat there until the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. When he finally drove back to Heartland, he still didn't know what the right choice was. But he knew he couldn't carry this alone anymore. He needed to look Nathan in the eye and demand the full truth. The opportunity came sooner than Jack expected. It was Saturday morning, and Amy had taken Lindy into town for a birthday party. Lou was at the Dude Ranch dealing with some guest complaints. Tim was off somewhere doing Tim things. The ranch was quiet except for the horses and the sound of Nathan's truck pulling into the driveway. Jack watched from the kitchen window as Nathan got out, carrying his veterinary bag. He was here to check on a mare that had seemed off the day before. Jack dried his hands on a dish towel, took a deep breath, and walked outside to meet his fate. "Nathan." Jack called out, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "Got a minute? Need to talk to you about something." Nathan looked up, and for just a second, Jack saw something flash across the younger man's face. Fear, maybe, or recognition that this moment was always coming. But then Nathan smiled that easy smile of his and nodded. "Sure, Jack. What's on your mind?" They walked into the barn together, and Jack waited until they were away from the house, away from any windows where someone might see or hear. He turned to face Nathan, and suddenly all the words he had rehearsed vanished from his mind. Jack didn't respond right away. He walked over to the barn window and stared out at the ranch he had built with his own two hands. The ranch where he had raised his daughters, where he had watched his granddaughters grow up, where Ty had become the son he never had. This land had seen every kind of heartbreak and joy a family could experience. And now it was about to see another kind of pain, one that Jack himself was going to have to inflict. He turned back to Nathan, and his voice was quieter than before, but somehow that made it more terrifying. "You think your story makes this better?" Jack asked. "You think because you were hurt, that gives you the right to lie to someone else who's been hurt?" "My granddaughter buried her husband, Nathan. She had to explain to her daughter why Daddy wasn't coming home. She spent nights screaming into her pillows so Lindy wouldn't hear her falling apart. And you used that pain. You weaponized her grief to make yourself look sympathetic, to make yourself look safe." Jack took a step closer. "That's not just a lie, son. That's manipulation. That's the kind of thing that breaks people permanently." Nathan's face went white. "No, Jack. That's not. I never meant to manipulate anyone. I just wanted to start over. When Amy and I started talking, and she told me about Ty, I saw how much pain she was in. I thought if I told her the truth about Monica, about how my wife betrayed me and took everything I had, Amy would see me as damaged goods, as someone too broken to trust. So I simplified it. I said Monica died because in a way, the woman I married did die. The person I thought she was never existed." He ran his hands through his hair, looking desperate. "I know it was wrong. God, I know that now. But I was drowning, Jack. I was so lonely and broken. And Amy was the first person in 2 years who made me feel like maybe I could be whole again. And that's supposed to make me feel sorry for you." Jack's voice had an edge now, sharp as broken glass. "You're not a kid, Nathan. You're a grown man who made a choice. Every single day you wake up next to my granddaughter, you're making that choice again. Every time she talks about Ty, every time she shares her pain with you, thinking you understand because you lost someone too. You're choosing to keep lying." Jack pulled out his phone and showed Nathan the pictures of the legal documents. "I have proof. I have evidence that you're not who you say you are. So now you've got a choice to make." Nathan stared at the phone screen like it was a snake about to strike. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. Jack put the phone back in his pocket and crossed his arms. "I want you to tell Amy the truth. All of it. Not some watered-down version where you're still the victim. I want you to tell her that you lied about your wife being dead. I want you to explain why you lied. And I want you to let her decide if she can live with that." Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but Jack wasn't finished. "You've got 3 days, 72 hours. If you haven't told her by Sunday evening, I will. And trust me, Nathan, you want this to come from you, not from me." The barn felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. Nathan looked like he might be sick. "Jack, please. If you tell her, I'll lose her. She'll never forgive me for this." Jack nodded slowly. Maybe she won't. Maybe this is the end of your relationship. And maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. But you know what? Maybe she surprises us both. Maybe Amy is strong enough to hear the truth and decide for herself what to do with it. But that's her choice to make, not yours. You've taken enough choices away from her by lying." Jack moved toward the barn door, then stopped and looked back. "And Nathan, if you run, if you disappear in the next 3 days, I'll make sure Amy knows exactly why you left." Nathan sank back down onto the hay bale, his whole body shaking. "How did this happen?" he asked, but Jack knew he wasn't really asking anyone. He was talking to himself, to the universe, to whatever had brought him to this moment. Jack felt a flicker of something that might have been pity, but he squashed it down. This wasn't about Nathan's feelings. This was about protecting Amy from building a life on quicksand. "It happened because you chose lies over truth," Jack said. "And now you're going to have to live with the consequences of that choice. We all do eventually." Jack walked out of the barn into the bright morning sunlight. His hands were steady now, his mind clear. He had done what needed to be done. The rest was up to Nathan. As he walked back toward the house, Jack thought about Amy, about how she would react when she learned the truth, about whether this would break her or make her stronger. He thought about all the conversations they would have, all the tears that might be shed, all the healing that might need to happen. But underneath all of that, Jack felt something else. He felt certain that he had made the right choice. Because love without truth wasn't love at all. It was just another pretty lie. And the Bartlett family had never been much good at living with lies. The next 3 days at Heartland felt like living inside a ticking time bomb. Jack went about his daily routine with the same steady rhythm he always had. He fed the horses, mended fences, sat on the porch with his coffee watching the sun come up over the mountains. But inside, his mind was counting down every hour, every minute. He watched Nathan closely, looking for signs that the man would either run away or finally do the right thing. And he watched Amy, his beautiful granddaughter who laughed with Lindy and worked with the horses, completely unaware that her world was about to shift under her feet. Nathan became a ghost of himself. Jack saw it happen in real time. The veterinarian showed up for dinner but barely ate. He smiled when Amy talked to him, but the smile never reached his eyes. On Friday night, Jack noticed Nathan standing in the driveway at midnight, just staring up at the stars like he was searching for answers written in the constellations. Once, Jack caught Nathan looking at him across the dinner table, and the desperation in those eyes was almost enough to make Jack reconsider. Almost. But then Amy would laugh at something Lindy said, and Jack would remember why truth mattered more than comfort. Sunday morning arrived with heavy gray clouds that threatened rain. Jack woke up before dawn, his chest tight with anticipation. Today was the deadline. By tonight, either Nathan would have told Amy the truth, or Jack would have to do it himself. He didn't want to be the one to break her heart. God knew he had seen that girl hurt enough for 10 lifetimes. But he also knew that protecting her meant sometimes doing the hard thing, the painful thing. He had learned that lesson when he had to tell her about her mother's problems, when he had to help her face Ty's death. Love wasn't always gentle. Sometimes love had teeth. At a tea breakfast, Nathan was nowhere to be seen. Amy mentioned he had texted her saying he needed to take care of some paperwork in town and would be back by afternoon. Jack felt his stomach drop. Was Nathan running? Had he decided to disappear rather than face the consequences? Jack spent the morning in a state of controlled panic, debating whether he should drive into town and track Nathan down. But at 2 in the afternoon, Nathan's truck pulled back into the driveway. Jack watched from the barn as Nathan sat in his vehicle for almost 10 minutes before finally getting out. The man looked like he had aged a decade in 3 days. By 5 o'clock, Nathan still hadn't said anything. Jack found him in the feed room, pretending to check inventory but really just hiding. "It's almost evening, Nathan," Jack said quietly. "You're running out of time." Nathan turned around, and Jack was shocked to see tears streaming down the man's face. "I can't do it, Jack. I've tried to find the words 100 times today, but every time I look at her, I just freeze. I'm terrified. I know I don't deserve any sympathy from you, but I'm begging you, please, give me one more day. Just one more day to figure out how to tell her without destroying everything." Jack shook his head slowly. No more days. That's how this started, Nathan. One more day of lying. One more day of pretending. One more day of building something on a foundation that was never solid. Jack moved closer, his voice firm but not unkind. "You tell her today, or I do." Those were the terms. "I don't break my word, son. Not even when it hurts." Nathan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I'll tell her tonight. After dinner, I'll ask her to take a walk with me, and I'll tell her everything." He looked at Jack with something like hope in his eyes. Will you be there? After I tell her? She's going to need family. I'll be here," Jack promised. "I've always been here. That's never going to change." They stood there in the feed room for another moment, 2 men on opposite sides of a truth that was about to explode. Then Nathan straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked toward the house. Jack followed at a distance, his heart heavy but his conscience clear. Dinner was quiet. Amy kept asking if Nathan was okay, noticing how pale he looked. He kept saying he was fine, just tired. Lindy chattered away about her day at school, completely innocent to the storm that was brewing around her. After dinner, Nathan asked Amy if she wanted to take a walk. Just the 2 of them. Amy smiled and agreed, grabbing a jacket against the evening chill. Jack watched them walk toward the barn together, Amy's hand in Nathan's. He saw Nathan's shoulders shaking slightly, saw Amy look up at him with concern. And then they disappeared into the barn, and Jack was left standing on the porch waiting.